May 22nd, 2020. Joe here again at the Wake Up Channel. Appreciate everybody for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the good social media stuff. You know the drill. In front of you is Nouriel Roubini. He is a very, very smart economist. He has been in the news here recently, saying something about the economy. Now, if you don't know who he is, he actually stood in front of the IMF back in 2006 saying that we're going off an economic cliff. No one really believed him then. He was one of very few people who were ringing the alarm bell, and he is doing it again today. He is doing it again because we are heading off an economic cliff, and things are going to get really bad over the next few months. In fact, over the next few years, if not over the next decade, going into 2030. I know that a lot of people just simply, they don't want to really look into the economy as much. They only care about what is in front of them. Now, there's a lot of economists that are saying that the stock market, we're going to have a V-like recovery, that a lot of money is being pumped into the stock market right now. It's being propped up. We're constantly seeing it gain and all this kind of stuff. So we're kind of forgetting about all these underlying factors that are going on with the economy. It's not just so much what's happening with the stock market, but that is a red herring just as much as anything else. It is there to kind of placate you and put you back to sleep and say, you know, everything will be okay. In fact, a lot of people are home during this quarantine trying to make some money in the stock market. They're day trading. And in fact, a lot of them are losing money. In fact, they will end up losing a lot of money because a lot of people will be pouring their life savings into the stock market thinking there's going to be this V-like recovery, but that's simply not going to happen. And the fact of the matter is the talking heads that are in the mass media, the CNNs, the MSNBCs, even Fox News, which sometimes I believe is unbiased, but they're really biased. You know they are. Everyone knows they are. Every media company out there has their own specific biases. And we need to be aware of that. But that's not really what this is all about. What this really all about is basically providing for your family. We are seeing these food lines grow over and over, just getting the bare necessities. And it's in the news. We see it. Sometimes we're part of it. But if we're not actually in the lines getting a lot of these things because our unemployment either ran out or we didn't qualify for unemployment or we got laid off or we own a small business and we're not able to get the customers in because we can't even open. We can't afford to pay our employees if that's what we have. Our warehouses are down, so we can't go to work and stuff like that. So we find ourselves in these types of lines constantly. And it can be very disconcerting for the average American. There's a lot of average American middle class and lower class and all that kind of stuff that we're all hurting. So, you know, I know that we all watch the news. We're trying to keep up with this on a daily basis. And a lot of us are left wondering what the government is really doing and what will actually come of all this. And it can be very confusing. And there's even a lot of people that independent media are kind of confused about this. And they're trying to explain these things and what may be coming, of the dark clouds that are coming, these talks of, you know, a coming depression, a coming mass layoffs. And of course, we're already seeing that now and food struggles and civil unrest. These are the biggest keywords that we're talking about. And believe me, they are coming. This is not something I really like to talk about. But the more and more I see the writing on the wall, the more and more I feel like it's necessary to tell people to prepare for things that are coming. My wife and I left Columbus, Ohio a month ago. We left early because we both saw the writing on the wall. We knew what was happening. And, you know, we had already picked out a property and we're going to, you know, be using that for farming and so forth. Now, I know not everyone can do that. It's not in a very expensive property. There are plenty of properties out there that are inexpensive. But I understand that if you don't have a certain amount of money that you have been saving to just buy a property, it can be very, very hard to deal with certain things like that. And that's not the only thing. The fact is that we all want to provide for our family. That's really the first and foremost thing on our mind. And I've been an outspoken critic of globalization. and the corporate takeover of this country, the corporatization of this country, of America, the land of the supposed free. And by now you should be aware that we are all slaves to the system. I don't like using that word, but we are all slaves to a system. We get up, we go to our work, we come home, we pay our bills and stuff like that. We have fewer and fewer actual overall choices in our life. And the fewer choices that we have, the less choices that we have, the less free we are. There's less and less competition. There's more automation. There's more AI. There's more robots taking over. We'll get into that as well. But the idea of the American dream actually died a long time ago. And while I do support the president and many of the things that he does, I don't agree with everything. This goes far beyond who was ever sitting, in the White House. It doesn't really matter. There's going to be an election coming up here in 2020. We all know it. And for many of us, we are dreading this. It's not going to be anything. It's going to far eclipse the 2016 election because it's going to be highly contentious, but it's also going to be very chaotic as well because we're going to be in the midst of another pandemic. We're going to be in the midst of an economic breakdown. We all have this idea in November that everything's going to be okay. It's going to be worse, so far worse than it is now. And it's going to be very explosive too. There could be civil unrest, especially with the mail-in ballots that we talked about yesterday and all this other kind of stuff. There's going to be even more accusations of meddling within the election. There's going to be we're already having problems with China. We're already now enemies with China and Russia and everyone else. And also there is a looming war with Iran on top of everything else too. We keep forgetting these things. But they never left. They're there, and they're going to resurface. We can have our debates. We can have our political debates, but we can, and we can feel one way or the other over some sort of candidate. But it doesn't really matter who comes on top at this point. This country will actually never be the same. They keep saying this is going to be the new normal. And that's not going to be the new normal. Nothing is really going to change. We actually really just want to provide for our families.
Outbreak continues. One income bracket is getting hit the hardest. A new survey out from Pew Research finding that low-income Americans are bearing the brunt of this. And for more, I want to bring in Sabeel Marcellus. And Sabeel, I know you're looking into this survey, but it's interesting because the group that seems to be struggling the most right now is the group that was struggling the most before this crisis.
That's right, Shauna. So lower income families were already in a tough position financially prior to the coronavirus pandemic. And now that the coronavirus pandemic has broken out throughout the world, they're the hardest hit. So take a look at this chart. It's from the Pew Research Center, and it's a survey, and it shows how Americans are faring in terms of paying their bills in full. And now more than half of lower income families have said they can't pay all of their bills. That's 53%. Compared to the 44% who could not in a typical month prior to the coronavirus outbreak.
So I think this is really important that so many people are going to be not able to pay their bills. I have been in so many conversations with people who are actually making more money on unemployment. I don't know how that's possible, but it is. But the fact of the matter is that unemployment's going to run out. People are taking out loans right now. They're not going to be able to pay back. And there's going to be so many people going into bankruptcy, and they're not going to be able to afford the food that's, to put on their table because the price of food is going to be going through the roof, just like everything else. Like I said, we can have debates about who's in the White House, but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because no one man is going to stop what's coming. It is a nightmare scenario that we are going through right now. The coronavirus could make the 2020 elections even worse than it was back in 2016. You thought riots and the protests were bad in 2016. Just wait. Just wait until this next election when everything is going to be coming down on top of everyone's head. No one is ready for what is coming. No one's ready for it. And the media, like I said, they're not going to let you know what's coming around the corner because it only makes sense to not really speak of these things. It only makes sense to placate the public because we can't have a public that's in complete chaos. So what's really going to happen? Because of this pandemic, this country, and in fact, this world is going to go down a very dark road. Our debt, our federal spending is basically going through the roof. And of course, that is going to be the new normal, like everything else. We keep hearing the new normal over and over and over again. It's almost like it's being pounded into our heads with an anvil. And I think this is a type of kind of a programming that's going on. They are trying to prepare us for something far, far worse that's coming down the roads. If you remember, obviously you don't remember, but ask your grandparents or something like that. They're still alive. They went to the Great Depression. They had to adjust to certain things. And that became their new normal because they had to go through that for many, many years. Now, in the Great Depression, it took many years for the Great Depression or the slide into the economic abyss. But now it's so much different. This has happened over a matter of weeks, and it is setting up one of the biggest calamities that this country is ever going to go through. Federal spending, like I was saying, federal spending's through the roof. And let's take a look at that. U.S. debt held by public as a share of GDP. That's after the 2020 stimulus. You can see the baseline there. We are far beyond that. We are heading towards, 125% debt to GDP ratio. And that is not a good thing for the economy as a whole. And when you couple that with the fact that our deficits are going to go through the roof, it's going to even get worse when the trade war with China really explodes, because every country is kind of getting, they're kind of retreating into themselves. Every country is becoming more nationalist. And while I'm not a fan of globalization, I think this is going to, at least in the short term, if not long term, it's going to make everything even more expensive. In fact, it's going to look like an inflationary crisis because of that. If we just looked at that alone, everything is going to be super, super expensive. This is another chart of the federal debt. Debt will equal the size of the economy this year. All these charts are just, they're all over the place, and they're all telling us the same exact story. Unemployment is sitting, they say, at 14%. Some say it's even lower than that, but that is simply not the truth. The actual unemployment figures are much, much higher than that. Some say that they're upwards of 25%. I think they're probably even higher than that, probably almost close to 30%, if you count other things, in fact, that go into that. So people are not going to be able to pay their mortgages. They're going to have lower paychecks. Even people that are going back to work right now, with a lot of these businesses that are opening, they are not hiring people, all their entire workforce back, number one. Number two, they are not hiring them back in full capacity. They are not doing full time. They're cutting benefits, and usually they are cutting the pay as well. And did I mention that food is getting more scarce and more expensive? So you have all of these things going into one scenario at the same time. You have all these armies showing up on the field at the same time, and they're all attacking the middle class. They're all attacking the lower class people. Now, eventually the upper class people will feel the burn, but it won't be before there's complete social rioting at that point. Then they will feel it, when the people actually hit the streets, and they're already hitting the streets now. So what's really going to happen is that when the food becomes scarce, people will actually turn into animals. They will start attacking each other. They will start doing whatever they have to do to get the food for their family, as well they should, including turning to violence, criminal activities, and so forth. You are going to see in America like out of The Purge. I know when you hear this, a lot of people can say, no, there's no way that could happen in America. We're a country that's free. We can do whatever we want. The American way will always prevail. Yes, I want to believe that too, but there's only so much that you can do to an economy before it breaks the camel's back. Before it breaks the back, and the camel's back is the middle class. The middle class has been completely and utterly destroyed throughout this pandemic. The small businesses are what actually keep the economy going. The people who are in the middle class, and even the middle class, are considered poor now, really, because of the widening gap between the super rich and us regular people. Those who own the huge, conglomerate, the corporations, the monopolies, and so forth, they don't really care about you. The people that run the government do not care about you. The deep state does not care about you. It's all part of the bigger plan. And that is the absolute destruction of this country. And once the people turn on themselves, once they turn into the wolves and they destroy each other, we'll end up doing the globalist job for them. This is what China wants. This is what the globalists want. China is an emerging superpower. Trump doesn't want this. A lot of Republicans do not want this. But China is really upset because they see the U.S. keeping them down, and they have seen the U.S. keeping them down for a long time. Their communism and their thirst for superpowership. Of course, they're already a superpower, but they're very, very thirsty right now. They want to run the entire world, and they are well on their way there because of the gutting of the center of America that's happened right now due to this pandemic. Like I said, unemployment going through the roof. People are going to be losing their unemployment checks here pretty soon, coming in July. So what's going to happen then? That is when the real fireworks will begin. That is when the depression will start. If you look at the depression, we are going in the same type of pattern that happened during the Great Depression. This happens. It's called a super cycle. Look up super cycle. I have done this in other videos. It's a 100-year super cycle. This happens every 100 years. Every 100 years, there is a change in command when it comes to a country, a superpower, and even the currency, the predominant currency that is being used. Before, it was the British pound, and now the U.S. dollar is going to take a back seat as well. It is going to go away. That's why do you think so many people are talking about cryptocurrencies? Why do you think Bill Gates wants to get in while the getting's good? That is what that whole 666 type thing is all about, the number of the beast and all that other kind of stuff. It's cryptocurrencies. It's the implants of chips. We've all heard the so-called conspiracy theories, but now it's a fact. But we are going to go into a type of situation where people will be having to make a lot of hard decisions going forward. And they're not going to be very easy decisions. They're going to be decisions that we have never had to make before. People will begin to riot, and when they're not able to afford even the basic necessities in life, they're going to turn on each other. There's so many so-called economists out there. Like I said, they're looking for a V-shaped recovery, and there might very well be, but it's going to be very short-lived. And it's souring, and some are saying it's going to be a U-shaped or even L-shaped recovery, which is really not a recovery at all. It's just called stagnation. But we're not going to get past it anytime soon. Remember the Great Depression, like I said, the Great Depression, if we look back at this chart here, we're following the same trend line. But the fact of the matter is the Great Depression took a period of a couple years to actually fully, go into effect. We have done this over the last 3 years. Now we are in a war with a trade war with China. We have entered a Cold War already with China. And the only really question is, are we going to enter a hot war? Are we going to enter an actual military battle with China? I don't think that's something that we really want to do because their military does outman us as far as I can tell. So that's not something we want to do. We would be lucky if we went into a Cold War. But it actually gets worse. It's because of this relationship with China, and the reason why it's so important is because it's toast right now. The recent trade wars has soured our relationship with other countries, including mainly China, and now most countries are keeping to themselves. They are internalizing everything. They are turning to nationalism, which some people can see as a good thing in a long run, but in a short run, it's terrible. because it makes everything more expensive. So they're attempting to produce their own products for their own people, and this will have dire consequences for this country because the products will become almost inaccessible. You know, the same products that we had affording before will be extremely inaccessible because they're going to be more expensive. But, you know, it still gets worse than that. When we consider that manufacturing will start to have to, have even more incentive to go into areas such as, automation and AI technology, and this is already happening now, more people will be out of work, which means less people will be able to buy those products. You can see the domino effect happening already. You can see that these businesses are shutting down. You can see where the manufacturing they are turning to automation because that is really what the future is. And there's not going to be enough education in the world to re-educate the people that run out. They lose their jobs because they simply can't keep up.
With experts on an issue making headlines. The COVID-19 outbreak has been a worldwide pandemic, hurting all societies and economies, and the disease truly knows no boundaries. Increasing trade barriers than jointly moving towards recovery. Taking center stage, of course, is the on-again, off-again trade war between the United States and China. US officials said this week that the Trump administration is turbocharging its initiative to remove supply chains from China, considering fresh tariffs to make Beijing pay for the handling of the coronavirus outbreak.
So that really just kind of summarizes everything. I think we need to really, and here recently, I think really need to bring this up. China is putting their communist foot down, especially on Hong Kong. Remember the Hong Kong riots? And they're, ever since 1997, Hong Kong, there was two states, basically one state, two different countries, if you would, two different systems. Now it doesn't matter to China. They are putting their communist foot down, and they're saying, you know what, we are putting the pedal to the metal, and we are going to be taking this whole thing over. It's going to be accelerated because they know that the depression is coming in this country. They know that people are going to start to get desperate, and we're going to start ripping this country apart. But the automation is going to be one of the biggest death nails to this country as well. So many people are going to be out of work, and just as a natural result, because you can't get enough people, and you can't afford to pay them because it's going to be too expensive. A lot of these companies, and not just warehouses, but also companies that make food, they are going to be turning to automation.
Well, I think you got a couple of things going on in the restaurant business. For instance, you've got restaurant owners who now have millions of employees who may not want to come back to work for them and put themselves in that situation again. On the other hand, you've got a customer base that's now very cognizant of and attuned to this potential for getting infected because somebody touched something that has now given you the virus. So this is what's going to speed up what's already been a trend towards automation. We're going to see robots preparing food and so forth.
And what are some other sectors? You talked about food preparation, but what are some other sectors that'll be impacted by this acceleration in automation?
One particular segment that has been dramatically impacted here in just the last few weeks is the call center business. A lot of companies have hired call center companies in the Philippines, and when the Philippines shut down because of the virus, the call center shut down, and so that meant that tens of thousands of calls couldn't come through to companies as they normally would, and so they had to scramble for a plan B. I think the long-term solution will be more use of artificial intelligence, again, automation, a transfer towards chatbots.
So there you go. We are heading towards automation, robots, AI technology. Why do you think so many companies are trying to hop on that bandwagon of AI? Why do you think they're dumping so much money into artificial intelligence? Because that's where we are heading right now. The year or the era of the worker, the middle class, the blue-collar worker, that era is over now. It only happened over the period of a few weeks. We all thought we had time, but we don't. Why do you think there's so many people saying maybe you ought to learn how to code? Well, guess what? If you don't know how to code, you're going to starve, right? Well, there is good news, but the middle class is going away. Please be prepared for it because so many people are going to be going bankrupt as well.
Shuffling products is the only activity left in this once bustling hair salon.
I've just spent 8 years of my life working around the clock to build a business for eventually have a retirement fund.
Bills piling up, a once unthinkable option is now on the table.
Even if I did declare bankruptcy tomorrow morning, I still would owe upwards of $600,000 on that house with no revenue to pay it.
See a lot of small business people where really their personal lines of credit, their credit cards, really are intermixed with their business. They really haven't separated them yet. They haven't gotten to that
Credit
stage.
counselors and bankruptcy trustees are being flooded with calls from people facing insolvency despite government support programs.
I have known so many people that have gone bankrupt, that have owned their own businesses and so forth. And the amount of bankruptcies that we're going to be seeing, that we've already seen and we're going to be seeing from this pandemic is going to be astronomical. But I said there was good news. I said there's hope. And the hope is this, that the only way that we actually get through this, the only way that we actually go forward as a human species, the only way that we fight back against the globalists and the people that want to throw robots and artificial intelligence and everything is that we must band together. We have to stop being so divided. Why do you think there's so much media support of this divisionary tactic? Why do you think they've been so compliant to the globalist and the deep state and whoever you want to call it, the Illuminati or whatever? Because they all have the same goal, is to divide us and to conquer us. Black, white, red, yellow, it doesn't matter. We are all the same on the inside. And pretty soon we are going to have to start working together against this common enemy that we have. And it's not even just the corporations, even though they are at the head of the table. There is an all-encompassing force that is driving against the human spirit right now. And this is something that we have to work together to fight against. We have to be more community-oriented. We have to work together. We have to learn different skills. We have to learn how to grow our own food. We have to learn how to live in a depressionary era because it is coming. I'll see you in the next video. Leave a comment underneath if you would like. I will see you in the next one. Have a great day. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.